Vanakkam to everyone. So, when it was decided that I would come here and speak, I had a big conundrum. You know what a conundrum is? Kolappam. Idhuva adhuva antru. I had a big conundrum whether to speak in English or whether to speak in Tamil. So, there's like two ways to think about it, right? One is you are all going to be software engineers, and be it software engineers or pretty much any profession these days, most of the communication, if not all of the communication, in English. You'll be writing English, you'll be reading English, you'll be speaking in English. So that's the way things are going to be. And if you are not ready to, if you are not willing to accept that reality, and if today, how will you suddenly one day, so let's say tomorrow is your first day at work. Are you going to sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow and say, I am ready for English, right? That's not going to happen. It's a process, has to happen slowly, baby steps, speak with hesitation, speak badly, speak with mistakes, and then eventually you become better at speaking and you are more confident in speaking in whatever language that is, be it English or something else. So I thought maybe English is the way to go. But then there is this other angle to it, which is that how many of you here? Maybe 70, 80 people? So all of you are here to listen to this one person. And all of your time, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, spent on this, and you are all here to hear what I'm going to say. And if I don't communicate in the language that you are the most comfortable in, I'm not really communicating, right? So if I'm saying something and half of it doesn't reach you, what is the point? I'm wasting everybody's time here. Is that even the right thing to do? Why should somebody get 80 people in a room and just waste their time? That's not good at all. So I was not sure if I should speak in Tamil or if I should speak in English. So I made a decision that I'm just going to start with English. Okay? I will start with English. If it's not working for you, if you would rather listen to Tamil, if more than half of what I'm saying is going above your head, it's not reaching here, it's just going above, right? If that happens, I want you to immediately tell me that, hey, stop this, don't waste my time, speak in the language that I understand, okay? So that's what I want you to do, and please do not hesitate to stop me in the middle, right? And there is no shame in saying that I don't understand this language, or I don't understand this word that you just said, or this sentence structure, that's weird, I don't really understand this. There is absolutely no shame in that, okay? Native English speakers, I've been in meetings where one American is speaking to another American or a Brit. So these are all native English speakers. The only language they speak is English. They don't speak any other language. And somebody says something, they don't understand, they say, what was that? And they ask for clarifications. And how much English do we speak at home, to our parents, to our teachers, to our friends, to our neighbors? Absolutely nothing, or barely anything. So we don't really have any reason to be ashamed of not understanding or not communicating in that language, okay? So whenever I say something and you don't understand it, you don't really have to be ashamed. You have to be proud, raising your hand and say, you know what, I am bold enough, I am courageous enough to say that I don't understand this thing. And when you say that, you are accepting that English is beneath you. English is something that you learn, it's not you, right? Sithiramum, Kaipalakam, Sindhamil, Napalakam. Same with English. You speak, you speak, you speak, and eventually it comes. Okay. So now question for you. I want you to raise hands. How many of you are comfortable with me continuing in English? Okay. I see enough hands, so I'm going to continue in English. Okay? All right. So now, it's been told probably to you all that I've been in the industry for many years. I'm an accomplished software engineer. I don't know what you're all thinking. But the reason I am here is because I want to have a conversation with my juniors. I was like you, a few years ago. I graduated, and then it was a very difficult task for me to actually go into a workplace and doing the work. So I know exactly how it feels because I've sat in these chairs. I've been in this position, so I know how you feel. And I want you to treat me as a brother, as a senior of your own college. So if a senior comes to you and he's saying something and you don't agree with it or you don't understand it, it doesn't make sense to you, what would you do? You would stop and ask questions. I want you to do the same thing. It doesn't matter if there are so many of them. We are all friends here. Right? So do not hesitate to interrupt me. Just raise your hand and say, hey, let's stop the thing that's going on now. Let's talk about what I want to talk about, right? So don't hesitate to do that because I want this to be a dialogue. I don't want this to be a monologue. You know the difference, right? Mono, di means two. So dialogue is between two people or two parties. A monologue is where one person is chattering, and nothing is coming back. I do not want this to be a monologue. I want this to be a conversation. I want this to be a dialogue. Okay, so that's why setting up the conversation, and I'm going to jump into one thing that is very personal or dear to all of us: money. Everybody wants to make money. We are all here, and some of us might even think that, oh, I'm here because I want to learn, right? But ultimately, most of us, if not all of us, are here because this degree, this education is going to make us better, make us more able to go into the world and make money. So money is something very, very important and significant for all of us. So let's talk about money. I'm going to just pick somebody. Unga per enna? Sajan. Sajan thane. So we have Sajan here. Let's say I want Sajan to give me 1,000 rupees. Okay. What can I do? So if I want him to give me 1,000 rupees, happily give that 1,000 rupees, what should we do? What can I do? Anyone has any idea? Sattama sollunga. Exactly, perfect. I can work for him. Do something that he wants to, and then something that he thinks is worth 1,000 rupees. I cannot just say, oh yeah, I'll give me your shirt, I'll just hang it there and give me 1,000 rupees. He's not going to give me 1,000 rupees for that, right? So I should work for him, or maybe I can give him something. I can say, hey, this phone of mine, it's worth more than 1,000 rupees, but I'll give it to you for 1,000 rupees. Will you take it? And if he wants a phone, maybe he'll take the phone and give me 1,000 rupees. Okay, fine. And let's say I want 1,000 rupees from every one person in this room. Each one of you, I want you to give me 1,000 rupees. What can I do? I cannot work for every one of you. That's not easy. I cannot give 70, 80 phones. I don't have them. So what I can do is, I don't know what I can do. I don't have an answer for that. But the general framework is that I should give you something that you think is worth 1,000 rupees or more, and you want the thing. An example would be books for this semester. So you all need it, and maybe the books are worth 1,000 rupees, then maybe you'll say, okay, fine, give me that books, give me those books, I will pay you 1,000 rupees. Or I can do you something, maybe, I don't know, say, let's say we all want to go to Pondicherry and say, okay, everybody come to me, I will give you a car, and then you can sit in it, I will drop you at Pondicherry. And if it's, I don't know if it's worth 1,000 rupees, but for the sake of this conversation, if we say it's worth 1,000 rupees, you're going to give me that 1,000 rupees. And then, that happens. So you give me money, I give you service back. So what does this mean here? What this means is that nothing in this world is free. If I want money, I have to give something back. So now let's think about people who earn a lot of money. Who earns a lot of money? Cricket players. So professional cricket players earn something like 10 crores, 15 crores, 8 crores for playing one season of IPL. Like one person, one player goes and plays this one tournament for this 1 year, and they get like crores of rupees. Who is giving them that much money? Like, have you ever seen somebody work 1 year and earn 8 crores? Do you have any neighbor like that? Do you know of any uncle who's like, hey, yeah, I worked for this 1 year and they gave me 8 crores? Who is giving them that much money? Who are these people? Where is the money coming from? Sponsors, yes, that's a very good answer. And the teams like Chennai Super Kings or Delhi Capitals, they pay. That's what it looks like to us, right? We look at it and say, oh yeah, Chennai Super Kings is writing a check to Ravindra Jadeja, and it's public news, so we think Chennai Super Kings is paying the money. But are they really? Is it Chennai Super Kings paying the money? Did we ever think about it? So, okay, let's follow the trail. If you don't know what's happening, you just say, follow the trail and find out where it is leading. Chennai Super Kings gives crores of rupees to Ravindra Jadeja. Okay, but why would Chennai Super Kings do that? Ravindra Jadeja is not their relative or anyone, right? Why would they give it? They are giving it because it's their business. Chennai Super Kings makes money from IPL, and because they make money from IPL, they are giving some money to Ravindra Jadeja because Ravindra Jadeja makes Chennai Super Kings business successful. Would you agree? So where is the money coming from? Okay, so Chennai Super Kings makes money. Okay, great. But where is that money coming from? Who is giving that money? We know Chennai Super Kings gives Ravindra Jadeja money, but who is giving Chennai Super Kings money? I'll give you two examples. There are many ways through which money goes into Chennai Super Kings. I'll talk about two things. Number one, media rights, broadcast rights. So there is a sports channel and they want to live telecast the game, and they pay a certain amount of money to the IPL organization, and IPL organization gives that money to teams. So Chennai Super Kings gets some of this money from the media companies, TV companies, Hotstar, all these people. Okay, that makes sense because they are getting something in back, they are giving money. But why would a TV company pay so much money to IPL? Because there is business, right? So there is one person, my neighbor or maybe me, sitting in my house and watching the IPL games. I am paying how much? Maybe 200 rupees a month for watching those games. That is the money that ends up going to Ravindra Jadeja. right? You don't think, you look at your 200 rupees and you say, oh yeah, that sounds like a good deal. But when somebody like Ravindra Jadeja gets 8 crores, that sounds kind of not good, right? Like, it's like, no, that's too much money. No, don't give him that. But our 200 rupees, that's fine, right? So that's one angle, right? Like, which is the media angle. And then the other one, which is also similar, where whenever there is a game, the stadium charges a ticket, right? Like, you have to pay some money to get, the best seat or the reasonable seat, whatever. You pay money to go inside the ground and watch. You pay money, and a part of that money goes to IPL, and then trickles down to the teams, and from there goes to the player. So now question, who is paying Ravindra Jadeja? All of us. So the people who watch IPL pay them so much money. Okay? So that's the money path. So what is in it for us? So it's cool to think about what's happening there and make sense of it. But if it's not helping me personally, what's the point? So how is it going to help you personally is that if you want to make money like Ravindra Jadeja, you have to give value back like Ravindra Jadeja does. When Jadeja is batting, everybody is sitting there, oh yeah, this ball is going to be a 6. We're waiting for that. That entertainment, that's where the money is coming from. And if you want to make money in your life, you don't say, oh, I want X lakhs or I want 5 crores. You say, what can I give to the people? What can I give to the society that they are willing to pay me for? So you need to solve a problem to the society. So if you see a problem, go solve it and make it so good. So make the product or service so good that they will pay you for that. So that's the angle you should be looking at. If you go and work at a software company, they'll say, oh yeah, build these systems, write this code. We will pay you, 20 lakhs, 15 lakhs, some number. You don't really say, oh, I'm working and they're paying. If you look at that, you're only looking at Chennai Super Kings writing a check to Ravindra Jadeja. You're missing the point. The money is not coming from Chennai Super Kings. The money is not coming to you from your company. The company's money comes from customers, and that's how it trickles down to you. So you have to understand where the value addition of your company is and where the value addition of yourself is. Okay? So that's the first point I wanted to make. And a reminder that you can stop me at any time and ask questions if you want. And there is also, I'm going to dedicate some time in the end just for questions. You might be curious and about the industry, about pretty much anything. So feel free to ask me anything that you want. And I'm also not going to require anyone to speak in any language, right? Like if you are comfortable speaking English, please do. If you're comfortable speaking Tamil, please do. I don't care. If you're comfortable speaking some other language, don't, because I don't speak those languages. Only the language I know is Tamil and English. Okay. So, this is a question economists will ask. So if you go to economics class and there is an economics professor, and this professor might ask you that question. So before we go into the question, let's talk about inflation. How many of you have heard of the term inflation? So inflation has two meanings. That's called inflation or inflammation. So that's a medical term. Vicum, that's the translation for inflation. And in finance or in economics, inflation means the prices are going up every day. So that's the thing. So imagine in 2005, say 15 years ago, you had buy a color TV. I don't know what the price was. Let's, for the sake of this conversation, let's say for 10,000 rupees, in 2005, you can buy a certain color TV. If you go to the store today with 10,000 rupees, can you buy a similar quality color TV today? Not possible, exactly. We know that. That's because the prices are going up all the time, and that is inflation. Okay? So we talked about 15 years. Now let's talk about 100 years. Somebody who has, say, 1,000 rupees in 1921. Whatever they could buy with 1,000 rupees in 1921, you can, if you want to buy the same things today, how much do you think it's going to cost? It's actually 3,97,400 rupees. Right, so the money has inflated. It's become 4 lakhs, 40 times. Is it 40 times? 400 times. So that's the amount of purchasing power the money has lost. Or, there are many ways to say this. So now I'm going back to the economics question. So I want you to listen and think of an answer. I'm going to ask you to choose. I'll give you 2 choices, and I'm going to ask you to choose. So we will give you a monthly salary. You don't have to do any work, okay? You don't have to do any work. We'll give you a monthly salary of 4 lakh rupees. Okay, and you can live your life happily. And you will be here today. Okay, 2021, you will give you 4 lakh rupees every month, and you can live your life. So that's the first option. The second option is we will give you something ridiculous amount of money, like 5,000 rupees, but you have to go back to 1921. So 5 lakhs rupees in 5,000 rupees in 1921 is as good as 20 lakhs rupees today. Right? So your 2 options: take 4 lakhs a month and live in 2021, or go back 100 years, take the equivalent of 20 lakhs every month. So these are the options. I'm going to ask, how many of you would choose to go back in time and get equivalent of 20 lakhs? Raise your hands. How many of you want to go to 1920? Okay, I have 1 hand. Okay, I have a few. Equivalent of 20 lakhs every month. You don't have to work. Okay, so now, how many of you want to go to? Are you asking a question? Okay, thank you. Okay, now how many of you would stay in 2021 and will be happy with just 4 lakhs a month? I have to see everybody's hands raising because nobody raised the first time. I want this to be a conversation. Come on. Okay. All right. So here. So the reason for asking this question is living in 1921 and living in 2021 are 2 separate things, because it doesn't matter how much money you have if you are in 1921, because you can only live life as a 1921 person. Example, you want entertainment in 1921. What can you do? You either get somebody to, put a drama in front of you, or you go to somebody's house and say, hey, can you please sing for me? I'm going to listen. You can pay them, but how many musicians can you find in your local town? Or maybe you travel, everywhere, but can you, the moment you want, today, you can play whatever song you want and you can enjoy that. That's not possible in 1921. And then talk about, say, medicine. If you get sick today, you have tons and tons of options opportunities or facilities to make you better. But if you go to 1921, you don't really have that many choices. So 15 years ago, 11 years ago, I fell from a bike and I broke my bone. It was a very bad fracture. I had so the bone actually broke into many small pieces, and they had to do like some complex surgery to make it better. Now I can I can do everything that I did before. I can run, I can walk, I can jump, I can do whatever the thing I want. If the same accident, if it had happened, say 100 years ago, how will my life be after that? Will I have the same kind of a leg today? Right? So you go back to 1921, you have plenty of money, but that's still a worse quality. The quality of your life is not really increasing with money. Right? So now let's talk about what really happened in these 100 years to have such a drastic change in the way people live. What happened? Who did all the work to bring together all these improvements to quality of life? I think the answer is easy. It's everybody. So everybody who worked during these 100 years did their part, tiny by tiny, little by little, they improved things. Right? So like we see today, there is like one procedure, say a medical procedure, and you have to cut open the body and do the surgery, do the procedure, and then eventually then say, oh yeah, we don't really need to cut you open, we'll just do laparoscopy. Laparoscopy is less invasive, less painful, it takes shorter amount of time to heal. So that's an improvement. If you just look at it, it's one small improvement. But such an improvement happening again and again and again and again over 100 years, that's a massive, massive difference, quality of life. Right? So that's the kind of a difference that we are talking about that happens every day in our life, but we never see that. Because if you don't take a longer time duration, it's very difficult to see. So okay, why am I saying this? How is it relevant to me? It's relevant to us because whatever you do after you finish your education and you start working, whatever you do is going to contribute to the next 100 years. It may not feel like it. It may feel like you're just doing it because they are paying you money. But what you do contributes to the society. And when you actually think about it that way, it makes a lot of sense. And then I will ask you to say, okay, here's the thing. You are able to shape the world. You may not change the entire world, but the way, the work that you do is going to change the world. And now, what is it that you want to do? How do you want to shape the world? That's the question. Most of us don't know and I don't have an answer for it. I would, ask you. So let's say God comes in front of us and he says, or he or she says, I'm going to give you one wish. I'll grant you one wish. What are you going to ask? Can any of us ask a reasonable wish? When I say reasonable, I'm saying I'm going to ask this and then I'll live my entire life without regretting what I asked. Say you ask for 100 crores today, and then 10 years later, maybe you will be thinking, maybe I should have asked for 1,000 crores. Right? That's regret. Or maybe you say, I want India to be a superpower, whatever. Right? And then India becomes number one economy in the world or number one country in the world. And then you see the way society changes and you say, oh my God, I should have asked for superpower while retaining these qualities. Right? Something like it. You are always going to regret what you asked. Right? So if you can think of something where you ask, hey God, make this happen and live your entire life after that, and you will not regret what you asked. If you can find an answer, if you can find a wish like that, then that is your career. When people say, think about your career, you have to plan your career, this is my advice. Think about what you want to ask the God. If God can make something happen like that, we cannot do that. So we work our entire lives for the same change or to make the same impact. And that should be your career. Everybody here, when I say everybody here, not in this room, like vast majority of people, vast majority of students, when they're studying, they only think about, I want to get a job, or I want to get a job in this specific company. And they don't really think beyond that. How many of you have thought beyond that? Right? Like you say, I like this specific company, I want to work for this company, and that's my goal, that's my dream. I'm not saying it's a bad dream to have, it's fine. I'm just saying it's insufficient dream. So it's, a desire like that, what it means is, it's like dreaming of going to Egmore railway station. Right? So it doesn't really matter if you don't know where you want to go from Egmore railway station. Right? Like let's say I want a job at Microsoft, and I got a job at Microsoft. Now what? Maybe you have to work really hard. Maybe you have to work for 5 years to actually get a job at Microsoft. But then your career has many more years after that. So let's say somebody starts working at 25 and they are going to work till the age of 60. How many years is that? 35 years you are going to work. And if you don't have a plan for or a desire for what you want to do in those 35 years, it's not going to be easy for you to decide whether you are doing the right thing, whether you are moving in the right direction, whether you are making progress. So my advice to you would be, don't think about going to Egmore railway station. Think about a destination. Say, I want to go to Goa. I want to go do this. And then from there, I want to go to, Gurugram, some place, right? So have a plan like that. And then it doesn't really matter whether you go to Egmore railway station or Central railway station, because you only care about the destination. You care about the changes that you bring to the society, irrespective of which company you are inside. Right? So that's what I want you to think about when talking about career. So first I said, making money. Then we talked about society. Now we are talking about career. So in your career, you think about the changes that you want to bring to the society. And if you do that well, people will pay you. So your career determines how rich you become. So that's the way you can connect it. If you just say, I will switch from this job to that job, I will learn this course, and I will earn money because that's what other people are doing. Maybe you can do that, but that's not going to give you a lot of money. So if you want to make a lot of money, you have to figure out a problem to solve, and then figure out how to go and solve the problem. And you have to choose the company. You say, I don't want to work at this company because my aim, my career, my life goal is not possible if I work in this company. So that's the way I want you to think. And then just 2 more topics, and then we'll wrap this up. I see many tired faces. Sorry about that. So what is success and happiness? Many people believe that if they are successful, that will make them proud. They'll make them happy. So will you be happy if you are successful? Yes? No? Will you be proud? Will you feel proud if you are successful? Yes. But if you are trying to be successful first, and then make your happiness conditional on that, you will never be successful, you will never be happy. You will always be trying to be happy, you will always trying to be successful, but that will just not happen. What you actually have to do is do the things that will make you happy, do the things that will make you proud, and then success will automatically follow. When I say do the things that make you happy, it sounds again simple. Oh yeah, I can just sit at home and watch TV, that makes me happy. It does for a while, but you cannot keep doing that. I don't know how many of you have experience with this, or maybe you can ask people. So, people smoke, right? So smoking, when you do it for the first time, it gives you some kind of a pleasure. It's good, it feels good. You do that, and then it becomes a habit. So very soon, you don't really get any joy out of it. So it's like 11:30, I'm going to go smoke, and people go and they'll smoke, and they will get absolutely no pleasure from the smoking, but they have to do it. They're like, oh no, I have to have my smoke. I have to smoke, and it becomes like a routine thing that you do, and it started as pleasure, but it's not bringing you joy or pleasure or anything anymore. And that's the same way sitting at home and watching TV or anything else that you choose is going to be. And how do you remain happy for 30 years? How do you remain happy for 70 years? That's something you have to think about and figure out for yourself. So when I say, do the things that make you happy, I'm saying do the things that will make you happy in the long term, that will keep you happy. And if you think about it and you try, you experiment, just don't think about it. Just experiment with it. If you have Saturday, Sunday, time off, try doing the same thing again and again, and see if it actually brings you joy. And then experiment with doing something else. And then eventually what you will figure out is that only when you do the things that's only possible by you, then that makes you happy, that makes you proud. You're like, oh, I built this system, nobody was ready to build it, or nobody was able to build it. And then that brings you proud. That brings you pride. That makes you proud. And that makes you happy. So find out by a lot of introspection and experiments, find out what is going to give you that long-term happiness and long-term satisfaction, and then do the things. And if you do that, that will, you don't even have to try. You will be very, very successful in career, and also you'll have a ton of money. You will have so much money, you will not know what to do with this money, that kind of money. But, it's all this sounds so, easy and simple, but it is not. It's like, hi. Wow. It's simple. The idea is simple, right? You just think about it and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do what's good for me, what's what makes me happy. But it's one of the most difficult things you can do, right? So just think about it, experiment with it, and then choose your career based on that, right? I always tell my people on my team, whenever I my junior engineers, my junior employees, optimize for happiness. So if you are not sure, if you have 3 options and you don't know what to choose the one that brings you the most satisfaction. Choose the one that brings you the most happiness, and you'll be fine, right? Maybe you won't be successful in the first year, maybe you won't be successful in the third year, but your career is 30 years. Why care about just what happens in 3 years? So always think about, prioritize. You have to give value. You have to say, my happiness is important, I'm going to protect it, and do whatever it takes to protect your happiness. And speaking about happiness, we have all seen those people, right? They'll be here sitting in computer science, but they are not really interested in computer science. They don't want to be doing computer science. Do you know of anybody like that? Or maybe in some other degree, they'll be sitting there and it's yeah, I'm studying maths because whatever, some reason. I don't really want to be learning maths. So, we all have people like that. And then, again, like with job, oh, I'm working at this company, but this job is so bad. Everybody in this company is so awful, so cheap. I don't want to be interacted. I don't have any friends here. I don't want any friends here. I would rather run away from this company. But still, you go there every day. Same way, you don't like computer science, but you come here every day for 4 years, 5 years. Right? What is it? It's called an internal conflict. So conflict is when Tamil modal sollam. When there are two parties, they don't agree with each other. They have a conflict. You say, "Oh, I want to go to the movie." No, I want to go to the beach. And then again, they always want to go together. And then there is a conflict. Right? Like they want to go together. This person wants to go to the beach. That person wants to go to the movie. So it's a problem. So that's a conflict. Now what I'm saying here is internal conflict. One part of your mind says, "Oh, I hate computer science. Why am I here?" And the other part says, "No, you have to be here. Like you enrolled for this degree. No, you have to go here." Right? So when you have an internal conflict like this, I want you to pay the most attention to it and find out why you are doing it. Right? Like a part of your mind says, "No, computer science, please, don't kill me." But the other part says, no, you have to go to the class today. Right? So now you have to sit down and talk. You be the arbitrator. You be the panchayat pannuvenga rendukum. So like, what's going on? Why is this mind is not agreeing with the other mind? And usually the answer ends up being, you know what, my family is paying so much money and I cannot really afford to abandon this course and go do something else. And that's a very, very practical, valid reason. And then once you say, "Oh, you know what, I don't like computer science, but I'm here because I choose to save money for the family." Right? Like it's not that my parents have spent money, I'm here. No, I choose to not waste money. Right? Like I chose this decision, I made this decision and I'm going to stick with it. Right? So whatever you do, the responsibility comes back to you. Right? Like so, maybe your parents asked you to. Maybe your parents asked you to do something. Maybe go to this course, or go stay in this hostel, or whatever, and you don't like it, but you still do it. Now you should not think that my parents are forcing me to do that. And if you think that, then there will be an internal conflict. There will be a fight. There will always be a fight in your mind, and you will not have any energy to do anything else. Why most of us are not creative? But children are very creative because they don't have an internal conflict. They don't have a fight going on inside their minds. But every one of us have some fight always happening inside, and all the energy goes to mediating that fight. So we are not creative. We are not really doing anything fun. We are not doing anything that brings us happiness. So find out that internal conflict and then resolve it. And always I tell people, ask the question, what can I do? Like whatever, maybe you are forced to do something. Maybe you are put in a jail, right? And then you have no option, right? Like you are inside the jail. There's nothing you can do to, meaning you cannot really come out at will. You cannot say, "Oh no, I'm fine, I'll go out." You cannot do that. But there are things you can do there. Like whatever the situation, find out what is in your control and do that. And that is the way out of every situation. Okay. And then, I wanted to talk about one thing that will be very useful to you all, which is how to, go to job interviews and be successful there. And like everybody here would want to, go to job interview and get the job, rather than saying, "Oh no, we are not giving you the job," right? So I have seen people, my friends, they are very, very good. They can program on their own, they can build whatever they want, and they also understand a lot of concepts. but they'll go to the interview and they will not get the job. On the other hand, somebody who doesn't really know anything, maybe memorized a few things, goes to the interview and gets the job. It happens. I've seen it. Why is that? And like the person who didn't get the job, it was very, very, very difficult for them to actually get a job, and it's an uphill battle. Why is that? It's because they have an internal conflict. When let's say, they're waiting for the interview, there are like 5 people here, and this person is one of them, and what that person is thinking is, everybody here is a genius, I am the dumbest person here, I am the least qualified for this job. And then they also, that's the story they tell themselves. Even if there is nobody here, they are just going to say, oh, I don't know why they called me for this interview. I am not really going to, satisfy their criteria. I'm just going to go inside and they'll say no job for you, and then I'll come back. And that's the default they have. Like, that's the way they are thinking. And then when you're going, so what happens here, you have to understand that this person has rejected themselves even before going into the interview. So the company doesn't have to reject him. He has already rejected himself. And then you go into the interview, and the interview becomes just a formality. You just go there and say, oh yeah, I'm here to be rejected, and I will do everything in my power to get rejected. So when you are in a place like an interview, you have to 100% believe, without a shred of doubt, believe that you are qualified to be there. Nobody is giving you a favor. Nobody is doing a favor to you by having you in that interview room. Okay, you are qualified to be there. And the same thing actually happens with big companies. We always think that people who are at big companies, they are all so smart, they are all confident. If you actually go and interact with those people, you will know. They will think, oh my God, everybody around me, all my colleagues, they are all superstars. I am such an idiot. How did I even come here? They have, there is a name for it. It's called imposter syndrome. They have this very bad feeling inside them, saying they don't qualify to be in that company, and they can go on for years with that struggle inside them. And what happens when you have that struggle? You are fighting inside. And when you are fighting inside, you cannot perform. When you don't perform, you don't progress in your career, you don't make money, you're not happy. When you are not happy, your family is not happy, it's a disaster. Right? So if you would take one thing away from this entire thing, it's this: identify internal conflicts inside you and resolve them. Find out why you are doing this seemingly bad thing or seemingly incorrect thing, and find the answer and take responsibility. Don't say, my father sent me here. Say, I chose to come here because I don't want to upset my father. My father's satisfaction, my father's happiness is important to me, so I am doing this. Right? Like that alone makes it, computer science, bearable. Right? You don't have to suffer a lot. So that's, yeah, so, sorry, okay. There is a Tamil poem that says the exact same thing. It was written like thousands of years ago. Yadum ure yavarum kelir. So the second line says, Teedum nandrum pirar tara vara. Whatever good happens to you, if you happen to be sitting outside the interview room at Amazon or Facebook, you don't say, somebody else gave me this. Right? Like Teedum nandrum pirar tara vara. You are in a good position. You have earned it. You are qualified to sit there. Feel proud. And then, if something bad happens, don't say, oh, they did this to me. What is my responsibility here? Take ownership, take responsibility. Right? Like, so that's the, the one message that I really want all of you to not forget. And that, I've exhausted all my notes. I hope it wasn't too bad. Thank you for sitting so patiently. That's it. And I'm happy to take questions if you have any.